So we're back into winter again. It's been an awesome summer, a great spring, summer, autumn period, especially the end of autumn. May was beautiful down here on the far south coast. We had great waves, great light winds. It's been really, really good. But now winter's upon us. I thought I'd throw a couple more clips out there on our Facebook page and on YouTube. A couple of little informative tips to keep you motivated through the winter months. For those of you who are interested, that is. So I'm going to kick off with a bit of talk about paddles. I think the importance of having the right paddle and having the right paddle length and that is a little bit underestimated by a lot of people. A lot of people jump into the surf or on the flat water and they just think I'm going to stand on this thing and go as fast as I can or ride the biggest waves as I can. But without the right paddle, it can be really quite tricky. So today I want to have a look at focusing on the length of your paddle in relation to the length of the board you're riding, especially in the surf, okay? Or, well, specifically in the surf. You would be used to people talking about the length of paddle in relation to your own height, but today I'm going to talk about length of paddle in relation to the length of your board that you're surfing on and how getting the length of your paddle right can really greatly improve your surfing. Okay, so let's get into it. Righto, so for this clip to make sense to you, firstly we need to have a look at stroke technique and how we generate power. I'm not going to go into all the nitty gritty, the fine tuning bits of getting your technique right. If you need to know more about that, give us a call and we can do a lesson or something down at the lake. But just for the purpose of this clip, we really need to focus on how you get the power in your stroke, which is hugely important in no matter what sort of paddling you're doing. So, just to keep it really, really simple, a lot of beginners tend to paddle like this, and I'll do it side on so you can see what I'm doing. The paddle enters the water there, and they flick back like this. And you might, at this point, you might be thinking, yeah, what's wrong with that? That's the way I paddle. Well, I'll just give you a tip. From here to back here, you've got no power in your stroke. All your stroke comes from this section back to about your foot, okay? So we need to have our legs bent, really lean forward, get the blade in a long way up towards the nose of the board and spend as much time in this front section of our board, okay? That's called the power phase of our stroke in there. So in a nice stroke, we need to be focusing on this front section of the board there. Board area. Now that's going to give us better speed. We're going to get a higher wave count. We're not going to have to do as many strokes paddling into waves. When we're out on the flat water, it's going to allow us to move with more speed into a headwind or into a strong current, which if you paddle the lakes like Marimbula Lake, you would know it can be quite a pain in the neck. So tip number one, and this is very important for the clip we've got today, focus your stroke on the front section of the board, okay? From the nose back to about your foot. So now we've had a look at how to generate the power and where to focus our stroke to get all that power from. That's going to be really important as we move on through this clip. But now we're going to have a quick look at the paddles and what we've got on offer. So there's basically two types of paddles. We've got a fixed length paddle like this where the shaft is cut and the handle's glued on and it can't be adjusted. And the second type is obviously the adjustable paddle. So you just flick the switch, adjust the length to where you want it, flick it back over, and you can play around with it quite a bit. Now I sell most of these ones with my packages. These are the paddles that I mostly sell. I really strongly recommend them so you can play around a bit and get it right, okay? And as we move on in this clip, you'll see how I'm talking about using different length paddles and with an adjustable, without having to spend a heap of money on several paddles, you can do it all with the one paddle. Now, I've got two paddles that I use. This is my flat water paddle or surf paddle if I'm riding a longboard, say my 10.6 or 12.6. This is my surf paddle, specifically surf paddle, okay? And that's what this clip's about, working out why I've got two different lengths of paddles, okay? Now, the general rule of thumb for your flat water paddle, which is what most people have, or you know, a big board surf paddle, is the handle should be roughly, top of the handle should be roughly, so they say, 6 to 8 inches above your head. Now, what we're talking about in this clip is totally my opinion. Everyone's got different opinions. Everyone that you talk to that knows a little bit about paddleboarding. I say it's totally up to you. What works for your body? I used to have a few shoulder issues. I found my paddle was a bit long, like I will talk about. I've cut this one to the exact length that works for me. I've been using these paddles now, both these paddles, for a couple of years. They're absolutely bulletproof. This one's just about to get thrown in my bag and taken on a trip to Bali. So let's get a heap of boards in here and we'll have a talk about why I'm using different length paddles and how it helps for different functions. Okay, so here we have a 10.6 all-rounder, an 8.6 surf, and a 7.4 wombat, which is specifically surf, but my son's actually been riding one really well as an all-rounder on flat water and in the waves. So if you're looking for a really good kids board as well, they're fantastic. So the 10.6 all-rounder, just to give you a quick rundown, great on flat water, great family board, great to throw the kids on with you, and great to introduce yourself to some surf and even ride some smaller waves as you get more advanced. They're still great fun in the smaller waves. The 8.6 surf, absolutely fantastic board. I'm living on them, absolutely love them. Totally perfect in the surf, and they paddle pretty nice on the flat water too, but on flat water I prefer to get on something longer. It's a lot more of a cruise. The 7.4 wombat, specifically surf for an adult, but for a kid, they make a really nice floaty all-rounder. So if you want to try any of these, just give me a buzz. I've got stacks of boards, so you can jump on it any time. Now let's get back to the paddle. So let's start on this 10.6. Now this is my flat water paddle, as I told you. This is what I would be using on the 10.6. I'd use it on the 10.6 if I took it out into the surf. It's the perfect length for me. It works really well for my body. Some people would probably say, oh, it's a little bit short, but look, my opinion, it works really well for me. I had shoulder issues using a longer paddle and I've worked it out that this works. So I get a really nice long stroke. As you can see, I've got plenty of distance from here back to my foot to get all the power I need, and it's just a really nice cruising paddle for that board. Now where the problem came in was I started mucking around. I went not on a 10.6, I was on a 10.4 and I went straight to the 7.4. So I dropped by 3 foot and I took this same paddle. So what happened was, I've jumped out in the surf, I'm still using this same length paddle, and I found myself stroking, but I'm reaching out well in front of the nose of the board. Sometimes when I'm really going hard, I'm way out in front of the nose of the board, okay? Now, what this does is it makes the board really swing like this. You lose total control of the board. So what you'll find yourself doing is you try and shorten your stroke, which makes the paddle far too long, and it just doesn't work, and you're out in the surf getting ridiculously tangled. It's really uncomfortable. So 2 options. I can either paddle around like this, looking like a daddy long legs with this big long paddle, or I could go home and make myself a shorter surf SUP, and all of a sudden I'm back into a nice controlled stroke at a nice controlled length for this length of board. Does that make sense? It's a huge difference. So when I'm going hard with the longer paddle, I'm reaching right to get the maximum amount of power, which we have already worked out is from the front of the board back to your feet. I need to be reaching right out, lunging out and really driving that paddle and getting a good stroke up in that power phase. But on this shorter board, I'm reaching out in front of the nose, creating all sorts of control problems. The board swinging like this, really ugly. But by shortening the paddle slightly by 5 or 6 inches, I've got great control. I'm right in the spot on this board and it works really nice. Same with this 8.6. It's not so bad because obviously it's a foot longer, but I'm still, you can see the nose is pulled in really tight on this board. To get the power I like to get out of the stroke, I'm leaning right up in front of myself like this, and every time I go like this, I'm forcing the board around. When I go like this, I'm forcing the board around, and it gives it a really horrible ride in the surf. You lose control, you're not getting as many waves, but by simply shortening the board like this, I'm really in control. The paddle's entering at about this section of the board, which reduces that flick, and gives me plenty of control, and it's just really easy. Now, just quickly, I just want to show you one more thing on these surf SUPs with the shorter paddle. But, just to show you the opposite, if I was to take this short paddle on this 10.6 for a nice cruise around the lake with the family, I'd be paddling like this. See how I'm not spending much time in that power phase? I could be getting a lot more out of the board. It just doesn't work. You've also got to take into account that if I was on the water here, I'd be sinking it down even deeper, so the paddle would be shorter. I'm not getting the amount of drive I need. But if I go back to my flat water paddle, I can reach right out and extend that power phase and really get bucket loads of drive. Now, one other bonus about this short paddle, when you're out in the surf, you tend to use it a lot for balance, especially on these little boards. So you'll find yourself standing out the back if you've got a few choppy conditions or a little, a bit of a rip running. You tend to be balancing all the time and doing little crossbow turns and just keeping yourself stable and in position. It's a hell of a lot easier with a little paddle like this than with something big and long like this where you're slapping it on the water, you're trying to do cross bows. It just doesn't work. So, the moral of the story is, when you're on a short board out in the surf, use a shorter paddle. It'll make the world of difference. Your surfing will just go through the roof. You'll be struggling around with something like this and wondering why you can't do it. Honestly, you'll go and cut a paddle. The next day, you'll be managing that board perfectly. It makes so much difference. So have a bit of a muck around, and I'll see you on the next clip.